I totally love that guitar amp tone. It is of course the tone of the SLO amplifier, the Super Lead Overdrive, designed by Mike Soldano way back in the 80s. Such a fascinating amplifier. I have had a borderline obsession with this amplifier for almost 35 years now. And I'm so glad that I have one right here on my desk right now. This is my SLO30, actually my SLO30 JP, because you know what, this is a custom built SLO30, and I'm going to show you the whole build process today. In fact, this is going to be a bit of a long video, so I have split it up into chapters so you guys can skip forward to whichever chapters you'd like to see. So if you want to see the build process, you can skip forward to that and you don't have to listen to me telling my story about why I have a fascination with this amplifier. Or if you want to see the playthrough right at the end, go ahead and skip forward to that. You're welcome to do whatever you'd like to do on this one. So what is it with this amplifier, the Soldano SLO, which I've had a fascination with? Well, firstly, it came out when I'd started playing guitar, which was 1989, and it was the big amplifier at the time. It was a game changer. Marshalls were king of the hill up until then in the rock world, and then in about 1988, 1989, the Soldano SLO started to show up, and that became the new king of the hill basically, because it had more gain, it had more saturation. There was just something about the tone. There was this crispiness about the tone. It was different from the Marshall. And the look of it was just phenomenal. It really kind of just stood out from all the other amplifiers which were out at the time. Now over the years I have had Soldano products. So I had a supercharger GTO, which I actually used on my first album, Strange Day. I actually used it for all the guitar tones. I used to boost it with a Boss DS1, and then the supercharger pedal used to go into a Line 6 Pod 2.0. Remember those, the Bean? Used to go into one of those and then into my interface and DAW, etc, etc, and I recorded the entire album like that. Fantastic sounding pedal. It was essentially the preamp from an SLO. And then I had an SP77 preamp, which I used to put through a Marshall monoblock power amplifier, which actually weighed the same as a mountain basically. It was so damn heavy, everything, but it sounded phenomenal, and I used that for a little while with a TC Electronic G Major to do all the switching and effects and stuff like that. But I have always wanted an SLO, and in fact about 23 years ago, in about the year 2000, I actually built an SLO from scratch, basically kind of just getting all the parts, sourcing it and finding the schematics and putting together a layout, and it worked for a little while. I didn't do a great job with the build, you know, my skills weren't that good at the time, but I did manage to build it, and I still have the chassis. I still have part of the circuit board as well, which I'll flash a picture up so that you guys can see it. I don't have the whole thing. Inside it was a complete rat's nest of like wires and stuff. I didn't do a very good job of the wiring, and it did work for a little while, but then it stopped working, and I just never figured out what was actually not working inside, so I never got it working again. But I did capture a little clip, which I shall play for you right now. And I remember I actually called that track The Amp That Jay Built. And it was great doing it, because it was like, wow, I've actually built this amplifier and I'm recording with it now. So that was my first fascination with the whole thing. And over the years, I've kind of coveted this amplifier. I've wanted one, but I just never got around to actually purchasing one. Now I have one right here, and I have one because about 6 months ago I found a kit on eBay, and then went to a website by my friends over at Rosamp in Italy, and they had kits for an SLO30, an SLO50 and an SLO100. And as tempting as the 100 was, I wanted to go for the 30 because of the tiny little size, because it fits into my shelving unit down here and it looks great with my other amplifiers. So I bought the kit immediately, It was around 500 euros, I think I paid for it without the tubes. I think it's about 600 with the tubes, but I have so many tubes anyways, didn't need the tubes. And then I set about actually building it this year. And it's been one of the most pleasurable builds I have ever done. It was such a lovely process because of how the whole thing was packaged. And I'm going to show you an unboxing of the whole thing as well, because it came in this tiny little box, which was just phenomenally well packed and so well organized and everything. And the build process itself was actually smooth sailing. The instructions and everything were so good on this one. And Savino over at Rosamp was incredibly helpful with some of the questions that I had, and I did have many questions. He always responded to my emails comprehensively with lots of information, and he's such a lovely guy. He was so helpful with this build. And this is technically my second SLO build, because you might have seen a couple of years ago I built my slow drag amplifier, which is a converted Jet City JCA22 head. Now that circuit was actually designed by Mike Soldano, and it's just built differently, different transformers, different power tubes obviously, because it's a 6V6 now, powered rather than 6L6, which is the bigger tubes which are in here. But that was my first dip into the water, back into the Soldano world, and I adore that amplifier. But now having an amplifier which is properly modeled on the actual SLO circuit, that's phenomenal. Alrighty, there's the story. Let's get going with the build. I'm going to show you the unboxing first, and then show you the whole build process, and at the end I'm also going to do a track in the studio. Enjoy, here we go. Alrighty, I wanted to show this because it came packed so beautifully, and I was so impressed with how they'd actually packaged the whole thing. Now this is tiny. This is going to be the size of the amplifier. Actually, it's going to be smaller, and with the actual cabinet and stuff, it'll probably be just a little bit bigger than this, which is just awesome. Perfect size. That's what I want in the studio to go with my other amps. Alrighty, let's check it out. So inside, it comes like this basically, and it looks so cool. When I opened it, I was just like, wow, this is really awesome. So packaged with the instructions and the parts list, they had this layout which is just fantastic. Absolutely awesome that they give a layout which is this big, and referencing it is just so easy. Check it out. very cool. Very cool instructions which they provided, and a full parts list of everything that's in there. The second diagram as well, which is actually the circuit diagram. So, you know, as soon as I opened this, it was like, okay, bonus points already, which was phenomenal. You know, you don't usually get this quality of stuff with amp builds. It's usually a PDF which you download, but here, you know, these are really good instructions. All right, inside packed really well. Yeah, styrofoam, and then you're presented with this. I looked inside and it just looked so damn cool. Everything was just packed so beautifully. I'll see if I can get this out in one piece. I may not be able to. I may have to take out bits at a time. Yeah, let's take it out bits at a time. This is another little package there, and take out some of this packaging material. Let's see if I can get my hands in here, because I do want to show you how it's packed. There you go. Whoa. That's it. I can put this aside now. Here you go. This is how it comes packed. That is just awesome. This is obviously the chassis of the amplifier. It's upside down, and then they have these boxes which fit neatly inside, and inside these boxes are the various components. So box number one, mystery box number one. What's inside the mystery box? It's all of the components. It's kind of the tube holders, well, the tube shields actually, and then all of the resistors and capacitors. Really good quality. Look, orange drop capacitors. This is just awesome. This is really amazing. They're all marked as well. They're all referenced with the value numbers on them. One which has just fallen off, but that's okay. I can just pop it inside the little baggie here. Make sure I know what it is. So even if you're a complete beginner, you'll know what the values of each of the components are. And same thing with the resistors. If I grab one of these bags with the resistors, it says 220k on this bag. I know they're 220k resistors. And just everything is just packaged really nicely, you know, really beautifully. The appropriate knobs for the SLO as well. I'm so excited about this. I'm super excited. This literally is kind of like Christmas time for me. Alrighty, so that's box number one. Fantastic that they package it all like that. This is going to make it easier to actually build the entire amplifier and stuff. In here is the circuit boards, the actual boards. The boards are actually quite small, quite dinky, and that's the power board. So it's not going to take long to populate these two and have them ready for the installation. All right, in the next box, which is this middle box, we have, oh, feels like a transformer. Yep, it is. It's one of the transformers. Oh, check out the size of this. That's phenomenal. That's a really substantial and good transformer. I like the weight of that, and it just feels good. Checked out some amp transformers, and you get one which is like, wow. It's a real big wow as well. So fabulous. That's one of the transformers. I imagine there's another transformer in the other one, and the choke and stuff like that. Let's have a check. So this one's heavy as well. So inside, yep, we've got the other transformer, which, if I can get it out, there you go. I'm not going to take it out, the wrapping. It's got the other transformer and the choke as well, which is in here, the filter choke. Fabulous. And instructions as well, I imagine so, for hooking them up and what the wire stands stand for and stuff. Yep, got full instructions as well. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Really nicely done. And you know what, when you're buying an amp kit and you want to build it and stuff, it's always really cool to receive it like this rather than just a jumble of parts, you know. Now, it is a jumble of parts, but it's an organized jumble of parts. And then, of course, we have the actual chassis for the amplifier, which is beautifully powder coated. It's in white. It's basically the Soldano color, and has everything printed on there. So that's the package. It's time to get building this. Super excited about doing this, so I'm going to get going with this. One of the cool things about this board is that all the components are actually marked out in terms of their values. So if you look somewhere around here, you can see that the resistor values and the capacitor values are actually written next to the resistor and capacitor placements. So R25 says 100k. So I know that I need to go to my resistors, get the 100k and pop it into that slot. This will make it really easy to populate the board. If you enjoy content like this and are enjoying watching this video, please do consider hitting the subscribe button and the bell notification as well, because I'm going to be building more amps really soon, including I think a 100-watt version of this one. Also, huge shout out to all of the people who have already subscribed. I so appreciate it, and my Patreon and YouTube member supporters. So much appreciated, guys and girls. All right, let's get back to the build. And just like that, the boards are done. This took me about 3 hours to do. The main board took me about 2 hours, and the power board, which I did off camera, took me about an hour to populate and solder. I really like these boards. They're built really well, and kind of, if I flip them over, these solder pads at the bottom, they've been really well thought out, really easy to solder, nice and big. They took the solder really well. So getting these to this stage was pretty quick and easy. These are the easiest amp boards I've ever built, and this is my 6th amp that I've built, so real pleasure to do. There's just one component which I haven't installed, which is the little trim pot for the bias, because what I'd like to do is have an external trim pot so that I can adjust the bias without having to open up the amp. One thing to note about the boards is these two resistors. They're actually 15k resistors, but they're 2 watt, and it doesn't say that on the board. I had to look it up on the schematic, which is kind of here. Looked it up and saw that they were 2 watts. And there's also the parts list, and when you look it up, it shows that these two resistors are actually 15k 2 watts. So just be careful with that, because there is a 15k resistor somewhere else on the board, and you don't want to put just a regular one in there. These need to be the 2 watt resistors here. So that's it, part 1 done, and I'm going to move on to populating the chassis with the transformers and the tube sockets. Then I guess I need to start thinking about installing the parts, wiring, etc. Also, you'll probably see that there is still a bunch of components left over. If you look at the layout, you'll see that some of the components are actually mounted straight to like switches and pots, and also tube bases and things like that. That's why there are other components still left over. So if you do this build and there are components left over after you've done this, don't panic. It's supposed to happen like that. This says so. Alrighty, I've been working away on the inside of the amp off camera. All of this stuff is really fiddly, and basically my head would have been in the way when I was filming, so I decided to just do it off camera. And check it out, a lot of it's done. This has gone really quickly as well. I'm surprised how quickly this is coming together, and you know, I'm quite fastidious about my wiring. I want it to be super neat all the time. And I think I have achieved that. So here's the arrangement with all the pots, and you can probably see the grounding rail at the top here. There's a lot of stuff which is actually mounted to like switches and tube bases and stuff, as you can see. This was fun to do, the switch matrix here. This is the switching for, I think, the crunch and clean mode, and also the bright switch as well. And this is for the foot switch, which I'll hook up to the other side, which is down here. This is the jack for the foot switch. But that's all done. It's all hooked up. I've done as much as I can without putting the circuit board inside. And these are connected directly to the pots. This is connected directly to the input jack. And we've got some resistors on these tube bases as well. And like I said, everything's very neat. The great thing about the Soldano layout, it has these elevated heaters as well, so they're straight down the heater lines. You don't have to twist the wires in order to keep noise down. And that comes all the way back here. I squared off the wires here so that they come back to the power tube bases here as well. That's the array for the power tubes as well. The 5 watt resistors on top there, directly on there. And you've got the impedance switch here, the selector switch, and there's a knob on the back there to select the impedance. The jacks for the speakers is all wired up. and the output transformer is completely wired into the chassis and the amp now. Just need to do the FX jacks, the foot switch, which I'll do this afternoon, and this whole array is for the power transformer, which I'll do when I start installing the boards into the amp. But it's going really well, going really quickly. I'm really pleased with the progress and just love the way it's looking. Alright, I'm going to do some more, and when I'm at stage where I'm actually wiring the circuit board into everything else, I'll come back and shoot some more video and show you what I'm doing. Yeah, if you're going to handle something like this, make sure it's all neat. It's a must. Of course it's not, but you know, it looks great when you do it like this. Alrighty, so some more work done. I have been hooking up the wires from the power transformer. I've hooked up as much as I can without putting the circuit boards in, which I'm going to do next. So the wires to the switches, both the standby and the on-off switch, the pilot light, which is going to glow a nice blue. Can't see it right there right now, but you will when I fire up the amp. Obviously the power inlet, their fuses, they're done, and all the wires are basically kind of, you know, snaking around there very neatly actually. So if I take this out of the way, you can see there's a lot of space in there and it's all neatly laid out. One addition that I made was these, and basically this is going to be external bias points. So if I show you the back of the chassis, you'll see that I have these points. So what I'll be able to do is the bias adjustment from outside. And you'll probably see that there's a hole here as well. That's for the trim pot. That's actually going to go straight into there, so that I'm going to be able to do the bias adjustment from the other side. Now you're probably wondering why I didn't put the trim pot back here. Well, I've done this a number of times, and basically the risk of putting it out here is that when you have a knob on here, you can easily knock the bias out. So I saw that Stereotone amps actually put their bias knob facing upwards like this. So I thought that was completely and utterly genius, which is why that is going to go here, and it's gonna, if I can flip the amp over with one hand, hopefully not breaking anything. Oh man, this is heavy. So that's going to come out of here, and there's going to be a little kind of, you know, just a knob there so that I can do the bias adjust. And then that's going to be hidden away, because, you know, it doesn't matter if I plug stuff in, my hand's not going to hit that, because I'm never really going to start sticking my hands in here, because I don't want to burn myself on the tubes, right? So that's going to be really, really convenient to do. So that's all done. Little tip as well. So I always mark everything off as I'm doing it. So you'll see on this sheet of paper, I've got ticks all over the place. Those ticks basically represent what I've done. All of the points are hooked up, and this is kind of my insurance that I've done it properly. And this is just one sheet. I've got duplicates of this this sheet, and I'm going to use the second sheet to double check, and I've got one more underneath there as well to triple check. Yay! And that way I'll know that everything is hooked up. So the next thing to do is to actually tackle all of these little wires which come out from the circuit board to the tubes. So I'm going to follow this diagram here. I'm not going to hook all of these in just yet. I'm just going to measure them, cut them, and then put them onto the circuit board themselves, because there are other points here which connect up to the circuit board as well. And basically I need to have access to the bottom of the board where all the solder points are in order to get all of these done. And then what I'll do is, as a final hookup for the amp, I'll connect all of these up on this side. So I'll start working on connecting all the wires on this side with the board basically flipped up like this, and on this one as well, same thing, board flipped up like this. And then basically I'll flip them back down, put them into place, and then finish off any wires. So these ones will be hooked up, the ones going to the tubes here, the preamp tubes, will be hooked up last. Alrighty, that's the next thing to do. So to do these wires, I'm going to put the circuit board in here for the time being, just place it where it's going to go, and then I have my wires. They're predominantly blue, purple and red on the diagram there, and I'm basically just going to measure out from the various points on the board to where the wires need to go, and then I'll just snip the wires, solder them into place on the board, and I'll keep doing that, taking this in and out. So the first wire is actually a blue wire, and I'm basically going to go from this side of the board and work my way all the way so that I make sure that I get every single wire that I need to, and then I'll mark it off on the diagram as well where I've attached wires, just so that I don't miss anything. So the first wire is a blue wire. Basically what I'll do is find the point where the wire goes, which is from here, and I'll measure to where it needs to go. And how I'm going to do this is kind of like how Soldano do it, which is to elevate the wires above the board. So it'll be kind of like this, and I'll show you a side view when I take the camera off the stand, but basically I'm going to be hooking the wires pretty much directly to where they need to go. Alrighty, so I'm going to do the first one. That literally is the first wire, which goes from the circuit board to the switch on the front, which goes from the normal to the overdrive channel. Alright, I'll strip this and then I'll put it into place on the board, take the board out and do it, because the solder points are on the bottom of the board. So I'll do that, and I'm not going to hook the other end into the switch yet, because otherwise that's it, the board's fixed in there, and I don't want it to be fixed in there just yet. I need to make sure that I do all the wires first. Alright, I've got to do this about 100 times around here, so I'm not going to bore you with video of me basically cutting wires 100 times. So I'll be back once I've done all of these. And there you go, the rat's nest is complete. As you can see, there are a lot of wires here now, and basically I had to measure out the wires and then tin both sides. So that basically means putting solder on each side of the wire, then put it into the actual circuit board, and then flip the circuit board over and solder the pads down there. And how many wires is it there? I don't know, about 30 odd wires which go along just this side. And I haven't finished yet, because I do need to do wires on this side going to the power tubes, the foot switch wires which come over to here, a couple of wires here which go over to the power board, which is here, and which will basically sit down here somewhere, etc, etc. So there's still a fair bit to do in terms of wiring, but I'll slowly get this done. And this actually took, I don't know, hour and a half or something like this to do all of these wires. So it is time consuming, but doing it this way you'll have a really neat looking amp in the end. I know it looks a mess at the moment, but once it's all put in there, and then I've actually zip tied all of these together so that it looks neat, it'll look absolutely fantastic. Okay, it's time to start wiring all of this in. I'm going to start with the power board, and I've done a separate sheet where I've circled all the connections that I need to make on both these boards, and I'm going to mark them off as I go along. So time to hook this up now. Alright, that's the power board all done. It was a little bit tricky to do because the connectors, the pads are actually on the underside of the board rather than the top, but you can always flip it up like this and just hang it there and get to all of these points. So they're all done. I just need to snip some of these wires, and then just need to ground it, and I'm going to do that pretty much at the end because there's another grounding wire from the preamp board which I need to attach there as well. Now, having a layout has just proven itself to be very, very valuable. So you see this wire here, this orange wire, I had completely missed it on here, and in fact I have now put this green wire which goes from here where it says D down to the power tube sockets. Now, if I hadn't connected that, if I hadn't realized because of the diagram, the amp wouldn't have worked. So it's a really good idea to have diagrams handy so that you know where you're connecting everything up and you can check it off. Alright, that's done now, so hopefully the amp will work. Alright, and the amp is completely done. I took my time over the wiring. It took a couple of hours to do it, but I wanted to do it all neatly and stuff, and it's looking pretty good. There's still a lot of wires which run inside this amplifier, as you can probably see there, and you know, down the back as well. But hey, every amplifier is like that. But I think it looks pretty good. You know, the layout's pretty clean, and now comes the slightly nervy, scary stage, which is got to plug in power socket and a speaker cab and switch it on. And fingers crossed it works. I'm sure it all will, because you know what, I checked everything off. I actually checked stuff off as I was going through. You can see all the sheets here. This was actually the wiring for all the wires, so I basically marked off that all of the wires were connected. I'd missed a couple actually. These two wires which go to the loop, the send on the loop, I'd actually not connected them, and I realized later that I hadn't connected them because there was a wire flopping around somewhere in here. So you know, double checking, it does pay off. So I did that. You know, everything's marked off now from both sides of the board. And then what I did was this morning I actually took the bigger layout which the guys at Rosamp had sent me with the kit, and you might be able to see pencil marks on here. Hopefully you can see that, little pencil marks here and there. I've basically gone through and made sure that every single wire was connected up properly. I didn't check, you know, all the components on the board. I'm sure that's all right because I double checked it when I did the board, but all of this wiring, I made sure it was all correct. It was all showing continuity from place to place. It always helps to do this because then, you know, you are pretty much sure that it's wired up correctly and everything's in the right place. Alrighty, I'm going to flip the amp around and show you the other side. And here you go, here's the other side. I've put the tubes in already. They're temporary tubes right now. I'll pick some really good tubes. They're just Chinese tubes which I've put in, and a couple of Harmer 6v6 tubes, 6v6 GT tubes which I've had for years. I haven't used them. One of the really awesome parts of this kit is the knobs. These are proper Soldano style knobs, and they look so awesome. You know what, if it looks like a Soldano and it sounds like a Soldano, you know what they say. Alrighty, so I'm going to plug this in to actually an attenuator first, and then my speaker cab, and then I need to bias the amp first very quickly, make sure that it's not too far off, and I'm going to do that, and then it's time to check if everything's working. Alrighty, boys and girls, the amp is done, yay! And it's actually working as well. I've just had a quick play through it, and it's sounding really awesome. There seems to be a little bit of noise, so I have emailed Savina over at Rosamp. He's been so helpful throughout this build, and I'm just asking him, you know, where the noise might be coming from. It's probably because it's not been put into a cabinet and stuff like that. So I'll just double check with him, see if there's anything I need to check. But you know what, all channels are working, all 3 channels, because the clean channel actually has a little switch there, if I can show you. Let's see if it focuses in. There you go, it's clean and crunch, so it goes to clean there, and when you flick it up it's a crunch channel. So 2 settings for that, and boy does this have gain. I mean, the overdrive channel, look where the gain is, it's on 4 at the moment. Yeah, it's on 4. It's and you know what, there's plenty of gain for lead sound on 4. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. It looks really good. Alright, next stage will be to build a cabinet for this and get the grill done and the logo as well, because I'm not going to leave it like this. You guys know I'm not going to leave it like this. So cool. Now I did make one small boo-boo when I built the amp. This is the bridge rectifier, or it was the bridge rectifier. And this actually goes to the optical switches which switch the channels. So it wasn't in the main circuit or the heaters or anything like that, it was just at the optical switches. Anyways, I had wired this in backwards. So when I first turned the amp on, there was a puff of smoke, and this was toast basically. It's cracked actually, it's basically done for, and I had to replace that. It wasn't a big deal, but you know, that was a small boo-boo which I made. So here's a tip: when you're building one of these amps, make sure you put this bridge rectifier in the right way, not like me and put it in the opposite way. It is well and truly alive. Check this out. Sounds freaking amazing. Once the amp was done, I wanted to build a cabinet for it, so I designed one in the style of my other amps, basically just a wood box. This time I reinforced the corners with carbon fiber L brackets, which was a cool touch, and I also recessed the handle into the top so that it lies flush when the amp is in my shelving unit. Came out great, did a final test fit, and then for the finish I decided to go for this cerused finish, which is very unique looking. Haven't seen it on an amp before. Looks amazing on this amp. I love the way this amp looks now, and it fits in with all of my other amps on the rack as well. Got the same look, which is my signature look for my amplifiers. So there you go, guys and girls, that's how the amplifier came together. First time I played it downstairs just through the cab, I was shaking literally. I was kind of trying to play and I was messing up so much because I just had this huge smile and it was like, that tone, wow, I finally have that, and it's right here on my bench and I'm playing through it. It was just such a phenomenal moment, and I love this amplifier. I still adore the tone. Every time I kind of get a digital modeling unit or a piece of software which has kind of, you know, amp models in it or something, I'm always reaching for the Soldano first. That's my go-to. It's kind of like, where's the Soldano model? I need to dial that one in, you know, as my tone. So I now have the actual amplifier which I can record with, play with. I want to play this out live as well. You know, I want to take this out onto a stage and actually crank it properly and have it playing loud through a speaker because I know it sounds phenomenal even at low volume, but at really loud volumes it's going to really shine. Alrighty, of course I brought this into the studio so I could record with it and do a full track for you, so that's what I'm going to do now. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, like I said before, please do hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when new videos are going to be coming out if you haven't done so already. Huge thanks to all the subscribers, Patreon and YouTube member supporters as well. I so appreciate all of your support. It helps out so much to grow my channel and allows me to do what I do and bring you really cool contents as well. I shall see you really soon with another video. In the meantime, enjoy the studio track and have a wonderful day. I'm going to go play this now. Have a great day. See you later.